Keisha Mainu always got her story. Armed with her trusty microphone and supported by her partner in crime and cameraman, Tsukashi team, she had covered drug rings, slave trades, sex scandals, political corruption, and even vigilantism throughout her illustrious career. So why, pray tell, was she having so much trouble writing a fluff piece about All Might and UA? Excuse me, can you tell me what it's like to have All Might as a teacher? She held her mic out to a shorter boy with a young face and unkempt green hair. Unfortunately, he had the personality to go with his immature appearance. Why, huh? I'm on TV. This continued for several minutes, the thought of being on TV apparently enough to reduce this child into a defective unit. The next person they approached was a short girl with a brown bob cut and massive eyes. Ooh, he's like all muscly and big and stuff. The reporter's sweat dropped. That's even more unhelpful, that Captain Stutter. Turns out, to her surprise, there was such a thing as too helpful. Every day we learn from him is a reminder that we're attending the finest institution in the world. I could not be more humbled. She dragged her cameraman away from the tall boy with wide hand gestures to interview another boy with spiky ash blonde hair. Before she could even hold out the mic, however, he roared, "Fuck off, you old HAG." From the back of the crowd, two figures smiled at the sight. A lanky man with blue hair turned to his companion, a black and purple gaseous figure. "Cheeky brat, huh?" Aizawa cleared his throat. "I saw your battle trial recordings." Bakugo, the hot-tempered teen, grunted in acknowledgement. "Grow up. You're talented, so don't waste it by being an idiot." Bakugo glowered at his desk, but quietly responded, "Yes, sir." And Midoriya, Izuku yelped at his name. "You were the only student to get seriously injured. It was the second day, so you get a pass. But the next time it happens, you're going to write a 10-page paper on masochism graded by midnight. Got it?" "Why yes, Aizawa-sensei." The teacher nodded. "All right, today we have something important to get out of the way," Aizawa said in his monotonous, yet intimidating, voice. Almost everyone in the class sharply inhaled. "Another test? You need to pick a class representative." "So normal." "Pick me," Kaminari exclaimed. "I'll be a great rep." "No, elect me," Ashido insisted. Kirishima interjected. "Nah, I'm the best choice. A manly job like class rep needs a manly person. And who better than me?" The short girl with AUX cords for earlobes, Jiro Kyoka, narrowed her eyes. "Are you saying only guys can be class rep?" Kirishima turned to her and gave her the most glaring "Are you an idiot" face possible. "Huh? What are you talking about? What does being manly have to do with gender?" Mineta interrupted. "Pick me. I'll make sure all skirts can only be 30 centimeters or lower." "Midoriya, wanna be my deputy?" Izuku buried his face in his hands. "Please don't talk to me. I almost miss middle school." One by one, nearly everyone in the class proclaimed their own desire to run for office. That was until Iida came to the rescue. "We must settle this in a dignified, democratic method. Let us vote for class representative." Yaoyorozu countered, "But wouldn't everyone just vote for themselves? Besides, we don't know each other well enough." Azui retorted. Iida shook his head. "If most of us vote for ourselves, then whomever receives multiple votes must be the ideal candidate for having made such an impression in such a short amount of time." Aizawa shrugged and went into his sleeping bag/cocoon. "Just hurry it up." So after the votes were cast and counted, and recounted after Iida's insistence, the results were announced on the board. Izuku Midoriya, 3 votes. Momo Yaoyorozu, 2 votes. Everyone else, 0 to 1 votes. Izuku laughed at the third line. So non-specific, then he realized what the vote meant. Aizawa glanced at the board and grunted. "All right, Midoriya is class representative. Yaoyorozu, your deputy representative. The rest of class is study hall." The teacher curled back up and went to sleep on his desk as if it was the most normal thing in the world. Bakugo narrowed his eyes and turned to face the still shell-shocked brunette. He looked like he was going to say something, most likely a profanity of some kind, but just turned back around. "Whatever." Iida grit his teeth. "To think it was my idea and I received only 1 vote. But I'm so happy someone thinks highly of me." Denki smiled. "Hey, this could work." Midoriya's super quick on his feet and Yaoyorozu's mad smart, too. Because he zoned out the second Aizawa finished talking, Izuku could only choke out an Uraraka ran to her friend. "Congrats, Deku. I know you'll be an awesome representative." Normally, lunchtime at UA is a time of joy. A time to enjoy the company of friends. A time to eat food made by a man with a cooking quirk that inexplicably became a pro-hero. Unfortunately, Midoriya was still twitching, completely shocked at the outcome of the vote. The others at his table, Iida to his right, Kirishima to his left, Uraraka, Ashido, and Yaoyorozu on the other side, had. Kirishima clapped him on the shoulder. Man, Midoriya, you need to lighten up. If I knew you'd be this freaked, I probably would have asked before I voted. Midoriya snapped out of his funk. Huh? You voted for me, Kirishima. I thought you said you wanted to be class rep. He nodded. Oh, I do, but Iida really got me thinking that my vote should go to whoever deserved it most, and you were definitely the manliest guy yesterday. Iida nodded in agreement. Indeed, Midoriya. Your quick thinking and iron jaw are traits we need in a leader. That's why I voted for you. Even though you all wanted to be class rep. You guys. Izuku felt his heart clench and his face contort into an expression mixing gratitude, tearfulness, and just a touch of humility. What's wrong with your face? Uraraka plainly asked. Izuku wiped his eyes. Just super grateful, is all. I'll be sure to live up to your expectations. He declared, his eyes swimming with, as Kirishima would call them, manly tears. Uraraka then asked, oh, wait. I voted for you, too. So who'd you vote for? Oh. I voted for Iida, actually. Izuku chuckled, scratching his cheek. Iida was surprised. What? Wow, Midoriya, I humbly thank you. Would you extras shut it? We're trying to eat. Bakugo roared from across the table. The six immediately fell silent with a sweat drop. Who's we? You're sitting alone. Uraraka then perked up from her juice, humbly. Iida, are you a rich boy? Iida coughed into his hand. Well, I usually do not advertise it, but my family does have many famous heroes in it. Really? Izuku's eyes sparkled with intrigue. Who? Anyone we'd know. Have you heard of Ingenium? Oh yeah. He's an awesome pro with over 60 sidekicks at his own agency. He's a relative. Iida chuckled proudly. He's my brother. Izuku gasped and fell back in an awestruck stupor, saved from falling to the ground by a quick Kirishima. Hey, Midoriya. This is too much. Ashido changed the subject. Hey, Yamamo the nickname earned a blush from the raven-haired beauty in question. Who was your second vote? She raised an eyebrow. How do you know who my first vote was? Ashido snickered. Well, it's sorta obvious you voted for yourself. You're like mad confident. Her serious facade broke faster than Midoriya's bones and she placed a hand over her mouth with a gasp, her eyes glittering. You think I'm confident? The other five at the table smiled at the sudden bounciness. So refreshing. The taller girl composed herself and answered, I'm not too sure. I've only really talked to Jiro and I was, unfortunately, with my Neta for the battle trial, but I don't think either of them voted for me. It would have to be the last person with 0 votes. Iida, do you know who that was? Before the bespectacled boy could answer, a blaring alarm went off, filling the very air with a shrill ringing. Security level 3 has been breached. Please evacuate in a calm and orderly fashion. Most of the older students immediately took off in a panic, fleeing the cafeteria in a frenzied dash for the exit. Hey, what's going on? Kirishima asked one upperclassman. Someone's invaded the school. This hasn't happened in years. You ought to get moving, too. Soon enough, the students of Class 1A were caught up in the mob, uncomfortably shoved around and pressed against walls, lockers, or even other students. Iida grunted as his face was slammed against the window, but he widened his eyes once he saw a gaping hole in the UA fence and a swarm of reporters scrambling through it. That's it. Everyone, calm down. It's just the press. Iida cried, but to avail. He continued to shout, desperately trying to gain his classmates' attention. It's not working. How can I reach them? Iida noticed Uraraka nearby and a metaphorical light bulb lit up. Uraraka, please use your quirk on me. She complied without hesitation, tapping her friend's outstretched hand and watching him float up. I must gain their attention in a manner that is both graceful and inspiring. That is how you represent UA. So after crashing face first into the wall, Iida shouted at the now stunned crowd, everyone. The breach was caused by the press only. It is nothing to panic over. We are students of UA and we must act in a manner befitting our institution. Luckily, his words managed to quell the rampaging mob so the evacuation continued in a calm and orderly fashion. That was, until Uraraka released her quirk and Iida fell right on top of Bakugo. Aizawa droned, class rep and deputy rep, you need to fill the rest of the positions. Izuku and Yaoyorozu stood at the front of the class with a list of officers. Izuku spoke as the representative, so we need a secretary, a treasurer, and a historian. Are any of you interested? Kaminari spoke up, what do they do? Oh, my bad. The secretary takes attendance and keeps track of important information for the whole class. Kaminari sighed, so basically all the hard stuff. The treasurer is in charge of class funds and events. Like parties and class outings. Before any of the students could even form excited looks, Aizawa added, it's mostly for general studies and the business and support courses. We don't have that kind of time. Izuku laughed nervously, and the historian keeps a record of class activities. Aizawa translated, they mean take pictures. Why Nizu insists on having this position is beyond me, but... Immediately, cries came across the classroom declaring intent to run. Scrambling to write all the names down, Izuku announced, okay, we'll appoint positions over the weekend. Is that alright, Aizawa-sensei? The pro hero shrugged, as long as I have it by Monday. Izuku nodded, oh, also, I think that Iida should replace me as class republic. Iida nearly dropped, what? Midoriya, I don't understand. You were elected fair and square. Why yeah, but, in the cafeteria, you were the first one to notice that there wasn't a real threat dash. Aizawa would have laughed at that statement if the massive hole in the fence Nizu showed him wasn't so imposing. Honestly can't say there wasn't one. And you managed to get everyone's attention. Truth be told, I'm not really good at public speaking or anything and I'm too timid to lead. Most of the class nodded in agreement, almost comical in their unity. But you're good at that. So you should be the one to lead us. Iida was silent for a moment, but he quickly grabbed Izuku's hand and shook it firmly, Midoriya, your words move my heart. I will accept this position, but only if you support me as deputy representative. Your intellect and decisiveness are still very much needed. Izuku smiled and shook his hand back, deal. Yaoyorozu could only sweat drop. I feel overlooked. Aizawa cleared his throat, now that you've decided to make me redo a stack of forms, how about we take a short quiz while I catch up? The entire class groaned. Midori, quick. Take it back. Take it back. Ashido frantically cried. Aizawa just chuckled, a sign of true sadism, there are no take-backs in my class. Now you have an essay to write. 1 page for every piece of paperwork. Iida raised his hand, is that 1 page front and back, Aizawa-sensei? The screams and roars from the class that day made even present Mike plug his ears. That night. Izuku grit his teeth, the Dagoba beach sand around him shifting slightly under the subtle shockwaves emanating from his extended leg. He was in a lunge position, his eyes closed tightly as he carefully felt the glow of one for all in his right leg ebb and flow under his mental grasp. Remember how it felt. 3%. Izuku repeated to himself like a mantra. Once he was satisfied, he opened his eyes to check, Sharingan, damn it. South close, 2. He deactivated both quirks and sat down to take a breath. In the last couple of days, he'd been substituting normal exercise for training to use one for all. While he'd certainly improved, he was still overshooting for the most part. Sometimes, even when he'd been sure that he was on the dot, he lost focus and it shot back up. I'm sure the range is totally fine, but precision is everything. He groaned and shook his head, it's like learning to move a brand new limb that constantly wants to go up. I need to get it down perfect or I'll never be able to catch up to everyone else. Standing up, Izuku concentrated one for all in his right arm, once more forcing the torrent of energy down into a more manageable wave. The egg in the microwave, it won't break, it won't break. He opened his eyes and checked his work. Did it get brighter? This continued for some time until finally, yes. That's it. Of course, he couldn't reproduce the result perfectly after the first success, but by the time the sun set, Izuku had successfully charged 3% of one for all in each of his limbs at least once. Can't actually test its power in public, so I guess I should just head home for now. Aizawa-sensei said we'd have something special for basic training anyways. I guess they want our first week to end on a high note. The long walk home had long since become a cool-down jog, but tonight, Izuku took it slow, savoring the last few sips of water in his bottle and the cool spring air. He stopped by the sporting goods store to buy a new, all-black face mask while the support company repaired his official one, then continued on his way. He approached the large recycling bin outside his apartment complex and threw the bottle away, only to jump out of his skin when he heard a sound from inside the blue container. Ow! It was so quiet, it might as well not have been uttered. But Izuku was certain that he'd heard someone cry out. Hello? Is someone in there? Izuku inched near the bin, one foot pointed away in case he needed to make a break for it. His heart thudded audibly against his ribs, or at least it felt like it did. There was no response, so Izuku cracked open the lid and peeked inside. Hello? However, he didn't see anything but bottles, cardboard boxes, and what looked like dirty mop. Huh. Didn't know you could recycle those. Closing the lid, Izuku scratched his head. I could have sworn. The next morning, Class 1A had gathered outside the UA building in what looked like a parking lot after changing into their hero costumes, apparently for their special battle training session. Man, I don't like being in suspense about all this. Kaminari groaned, putting his hands on his head. Kirishima smiled. It must be something good though. Otherwise we wouldn't be missing all our normal classes for this. Sato deadpanned. Also, do you want to keep listening to Present Mike-sensei do the monologue from Hamlet, Kaminari? The trio shuddered, remembering the ear-gratingly terrible rendition of the classic text, punctuated by Present Mike randomly switched from normal speech to his iconic screeching. On the other end of the parking lot, Izuku just arrived, having modified his gym uniform with some of the gear from his official costume that wasn't destroyed in the battle trial 2 days prior. Once the bus pulled around, Iida exclaimed, "Everyone, line up in number order and please enter the bus in a single file line." Of course, the bus did not have an ordered seat layout, so everyone pretty much sat wherever they wanted, much to Iida's chagrin. To think it was this kind of bus, so uncool. Iida groaned, his cheeks tinted red. While Izuku was busy laughing at his friend's embarrassment, he heard a sentence that made his blood run cold. "Midoriya, your quirk reminds me of All Might." Izuku's eyes opened comically wide. "Wa? Azui, there's no way." And my eyes change color. Azui shrugged, "Ribbit. Call me Tsu. And I'm just saying that your strength is reminiscent of his. Although your quirk seems worse because you injure yourself. Or perhaps you just have a weak body." That made Bakugo laugh. Kirishima came to Izuku's defense. "It's still awesome to have a flashy quirk like that. Mine makes me look all spiky and scary. And it doesn't do a lot of cool stuff." Izuku shook his head. "And no way, Kirishima. Your quirk is crazy strong. Plus, you have a lot of potential as a combat hero. You're like the tank character in a video game." Kirishima looked at his fist and clenched it with a smile. "So I'm like Donkey Kong from Super Smash Bros. That's pretty manly." Izuku chuckled sheepishly. "With that hair and a hard outer shell, you're basically Bowser." Kaminari added, "Besides, what's good about having a flashy quirk if you're a bad person? Like this guy." He jerked his thumb at Bakugo. "The hell do you mean, Pikachu?" Kaminari just smirked. "See what I mean? It's not even been a week and we all know your personality's worse than a manure farm smell." Tsuyu nodded. "He does seem more villainous than heroic." "Ribbit. I will fry you up and feed you to that French fuck." Aoyama shook his head rapidly in the back of the bus. "Non, merci. Who said you had a choice?" Izuku scratched his head nervously. "Oh my god, they're making fun of Kaken. I feel disconcertingly satisfied." After they arrived to the massive domed complex, and Aizawa unwrapped a still-writhing Bakugo from his scarf's clutches, the students marveled at the assorted landscapes and scenery in the indoor facility. "It's like a theme park." "But which one?" "Welcome to USJ. That one." The speaker approached the group by the entryway, gesturing widely past the staircase leading down to the main plaza and the paths to the different zones, also known as the Unforeseen Simulation Joint. "My name is Dash. 13. Both Izuku and Uraraka fangirled. "An. I know what I said, over the sight of the spacesuit-clad pro hero." 13 chuckled and rubbed his head. "Pleasure to meet you all. Like these two said, I'm the space hero, 13. I specialize in rescue operations, which is actually why you're all here." Aizawa approached the space hero. 13, where's All Might?" 13 cleared his throat and whispered while holding out 3 fingers. Izuku couldn't hear the words, but he got the gist. All Might is out of time. 13 continued his lecture. "You see, most pro heroes rarely fight villains, if at all. The majority of hero work are rescue missions. However, they're also much tougher than just fighting. Like my quirk, Black Hole." Uraraka's eyes twinkled. recognizing the quirk's name as 13 held a finger out to the class. Is extremely useful for absorbing debris and clearing disaster sites. However, it could easily kill someone. I'm sure many of you have similar predicaments. Izuku looked at his fist. That's why I've been training. But today, we're going to practice this. You'll all have to go to different disaster zones and attempt to resolve the crisis with your quirks in a manner befitting a hero. That is to say, no collateral damage. Speaking of collateral damage. A chilling voice sounded from the plaza below. Aizawa instantly tensed and stood guard at the top of the stairs. Izuku couldn't help himself and went to look too, nearly fainting at the sight of over 30 villains, all entering through a purple and black portal of some kind. Leading them was a lanky man with light blue hair and hands covering his face and black clothing. 13 stammered in shock at the sudden invasion. Senpai. What's the plan? Aizawa grit his teeth. I'll handle this alone. Protect the students. We're under attack. Aizawa's jaw tightened, his gaze stealing under his goggles. How did all these villains sneak past our security system? Is that purple smog from some sort of a teleportation quirk? But even that shouldn't get past our communications array. Kaminari, can you get a signal out? Try and contact UA or the police. Aizawa commanded. On it. Kaminari responded as he used his antennae to broadcast a signal. 13 said All Might was out of time for now. Did they know that? But the guy with the hands was talking about collateral damage. Does that mean we're not his targets? Izuku stammered at the ever-growing swarm of villains. Sharingan. I count 45 right now. And, I can see a lot of life signs in the different zones. Aizawa-sensei. The pro grunted, Get back, Midoriya. Not now. Izuku continued anyways, I can see a lot of life signs spread around the disaster sites. There's not supposed to be anybody besides us, right? Aizawa growled, No, there's not. If that purple guy really has a warp quirk and they bothered to stock each zone with villains, 13, there are villains in the disaster zones. I bet the teleportation user's gonna try to separate us so we're easy targets. 13 nodded, but to have these many villains, they certainly can't be more than Class D. Maybe save for those 3. 13 didn't even need to gesture to anything for everyone to know he meant the warp quirk user, the lanky guy covered in hands, and a massive creature with a beak, exposed cranium, and gouges littered across its black skin. Izuku called to Aizawa, Sensei, we should run. There's too many of them. And your quirk? Eraserhead practically smirked, you can't become a pro hero by only having one gimmick. With that, Aizawa charged the villains that took the initiative to climb the front stairs. Ha! Running into battle by himself. What an idiot. One villain shouted as he tried to fire the guns in his fingertips, only to find that they didn't work. What the F dash. Aizawa elbowed him in the nose, causing a rather impressive spray of blood. He then seized another villain by the neck and pulled him into one of his colleagues, sending both tumbling down the steps. With a few strategic twirls of his scarf, he was able to entrap another 3 villains in its grasp, taking them out with a quick tug of the cloth that slammed all of them together. Class 1A watched in amazement as their teacher single-handedly fought a small army of evildoers. Izuku watched especially closely, using his Sharingan to trace Eraserhead's movements. On the villain's end of things, the leader was scratching his neck in irritation. Ugh, these damn pros small fry NPCs can't hope to stand against a mini-boss like this. And the final boss is nowhere in sight. The purple smoke being, now adopting his corporeal form with a finely tailored 3-piece suit sans jacket, spoke. That one, Tamura Shigaraki, is Eraserhead. One of the more obscure pro heroes. The scratching quickened. Ah, I remember. He can erase non-heteromorphic quirks. So he's a gimmick boss. No problem, I brought my action replay. On cue, the large black birdman growled, as if preparing to pounce. Shigaraki chuckled, the air seemingly growing colder as he did, Not yet, Nomu. Let Kurogyri have some fun, first. Kurogyri, you know what to do. Of course, sir. In a swirl of dark mist, Kurogyri vanished from the plaza before reappearing at the front door, effectively sandwiching the students. Hello, future heroes. Could anyone tell me where All Might is? 13 barked, everyone, get behind me. Kaminari, any progress? The electric man shook his head, there's some sort of interference. Like another signal that cancels mine out as soon as I release it. There must be someone with a quirk like that hidden in the disaster zones. Iida, we need you to run and get help. Iida shook his head, but 13-sensei, running is dishonorable. It would be best to stay and help fight the dash. Yaoyorozu interrupted him. Iida, as class rep, it's your job to watch our well-being. And right now, the best thing you can do is to get help. The speedster thought for a brief moment before nodding and racing for the doors. However, Kurogiri was quick on the draw. Not so fast, boy. Can't have you running off, can we? He opened a portal in front of Iida that led right back to 13. The rescue hero growled and extended a finger. Iida, go again and don't stop for anything. I'll keep him off of you. Black hole. 13 waited until Iida was at a safe distance before his fingertip fell down, revealing a black abyss that sucked in everything with a violent pull. The mist man was no exception as his gaseous form was quickly pulled in. Izuku watched in awe until he noticed a metallic glint within the purple man's body. Looking with the Sharingan, he realized that it was glowing, much like a human body under his quirk's special eyesight. That must be his real body. We can target it. Kurogiri growled, what a powerful quirk. Shame it's squandered on someone with no battle aptitude. With that, a small portal began forming behind 13. However, it never finished forming because at that moment, Kurogiri was sent flying by a strong punch to his body. What? Who? Izuku landed on the ground, the subtle glow of 3% one for all fading from his fist. There's a metal neckplate on him. That's his real body. He was planning on opening a portal behind 13, probably to make black hole backfire. I'm lucky the Sharingan and 3% are faster than that. Deku. Nice work. Uraraka cheered. Huh. That was actually fairly apartment. Yaoyorozu smiled, and that bought time for Iida to get away. True to her words, Iida was currently forcing the doors to USJ open. Kurogiri's face was mostly colored gas, but if colored gas could emote, then Kurogiri was livid. Knocked back, by a child. I commend you on your students, 13-sensei. But I'm going to get serious now. He instantly warped Iida back from the door to 13. 13 chuckled, funny. I was going to say the same thing. The gloved hand went out, but this time, the 4 main fingertips opened up, producing a violent maelstrom. In a flash, Kurogiri was pulled back towards peril. However, the teleporter wasn't done as he opened a portal beneath 13 in a near instant. Gravity taking hold, the space hero fell through. Izuku's blood ran cold. Where'd he go? That portal, its speed was on a completely different level than before. Kurogiri laughed sadistically. Only one way to find an astronaut, look to the stars. At that moment, 13 crashed into the concrete, cracking his dome and heavily damaging his suit. His exit portal had opened from far above the ground. The hero wasn't conscious, and his body was barely shifting from his own breathing. Sorry if that surprised you, but if it helps, he wasn't even awake to feel pain. My quick teleportation tends to be a bit jarring. Uraraka looked at the mist man and felt a fire ignite in her heart at the sight of her favorite hero downed. You, monster. Iida grit his teeth. If he wasn't so preoccupied with buying me time, this would have never happened. Curse my weakness. Apparently, Bakugo and Kirishima felt some similar rage because they charged the villain, explosions, and rock-hard fists at the ready. However, the purple man simply opened 2 foggy portals in front of the students, making them vanish from sight. Don't worry about your friends. You really ought to worry about yourself first. Then several portals opened around the students, pulling nearly all of them inside. Izuku felt a weird floating sensation as he became enshrouded in the dark fog. However, he felt a pair of hands pull him forward. Man, that was a close one. Glad we didn't lose you, huh? Kaminari said, wiping his brow at having saved his friend. Izuku was about to thank him when he realized something. Kaminari, I think everyone else lost us. Jiro panted heavily as she surfaced, water slowly trickling down her head. What the heck? Where am I? There was no time to gather her bearings for at that moment, a shark-like villain breached from the water, his jagged teeth poised to strike. I didn't come here to kill kids, but who am I to choose? Jiro's eyes widened, and her body seized up in shock. I can't move. Luckily, she didn't have to. Azui leapt out of the water and delivered a hell of a kick to the shark villain's gills, causing him to convulse and fall unconscious. Jiro, grab on. Azui extended her tongue and pulled the punk girl with her, carrying them both to the deck of a large yacht in the middle of the water. Jiro coughed out whatever water entered her lungs and sighed in relief. Phew. Thanks, Azui. Call me Tsu. Oh, okay, Titsu. Jiro blushed at the lack of formality. Oh, thank God. I'm going to die surrounded by women. And like that, Jiro's face became red for a completely different reason. Oh great, we're stuck with the pervert. Mineta started sobbing, I'm so happy you're at Sundara. Tsuyu slapped him with her tongue, let's focus on escaping. Ribbit. The fog man was looking for All Might. I suppose that means they came to kill or capture him. Ribbit. Wait, they came to kill All Might? Are they stupid? Jiro asked, feeling an incredible sense of unease at Tsuyu's deduction. Mineta was bawling now. Tsuyu, please tell me you're kidding. Only my friends can call me Tsu. And I generally just say what's on my mind. Then we're gonna die. The short kid was practically hysterical, much to the villain's amusement. One of them, a ghastly-looking skeleton with black armor, smirked, looks like UA isn't as tough as they want you to believe. He raised his hand up, which produced a claw made of water from the surface. I guess that just makes them easy pickings. On the yacht, Tsuyu and Jiro were still trying to create a plan. Ribbit. We're in the flood zone, so I suppose everyone else is scattered across the other areas. If we can, we should try to find the others and regroup. Jiro scratched her head, but how can we escape? You're the only one fast enough to outrun them in water, but you'd be way slower with me. And me. Mineta cried, tears forming. Jiro didn't even acknowledge him. How can we at least hold the villains back long enough to escape? I have an idea, but I need your boot. Tsuyu just smacked him again, Ribbit. They circled around the boat. I might be able to jump past the villains with just one of you. Then I could come back and get the other. It'd be risky, but it's our best chance. Jiro, give me your boot. Shut it, mini perv. We don't have time for your shit, right now. But I have an idea. I don't want to hear your half-baked attempts to see us naked, you ignorant F-dash. At that moment, a massive claw of water ripped through the boat, causing it to sink. What's the plan? Jiro handed Mineta one of her boots. He immediately removed the speaker from the boot. Then he detached the grill, revealing the subwoofer beneath. Normally, sound waves fade out quickly in air because air's compressible, but water isn't. So dash. The sound waves from Jiro's boots would spread throughout the water, disabling the villains. Ribbit. That's pretty smart, Mineta. Tsuyu tilted her head, genuinely surprised. Mineta puffed his chest proudly, I can't die until I touch Yairosa's boobs. So until then, I just have to keep on living. Jiro resisted the temptation to throw the microperv into the water, replacing her now plain boot while plugging into her speaker, so I just need to create a massive sound wave underneath the water. Not too hard. If it's too strong, you'll liquefy their internal organs. Tsuyu added, too weak and it'll be like a jacuzzi. Jiro gulped and nodded, plugging into her speaker, alright. Let's do this. Todoroki sighed, his breath visible as a cold mist. Even as far as weaker villains go, you're all on the low end of things. The villains in front of him could only groan and stutter in response, completely incapacitated on account of the ice encapsulating their bodies. What the hell? One of the villains stammered, the cold seeping into his bones, the second we showed you up, this kid. Shigaraki promised the students would be easy. This guy's be better than most pros. Todoroki turned to leave, only to hear another villain pop up from behind him, never let your guard down, kid. Not even FO dash. The villain never finished his words because in a flash, Todoroki pushed him down with a palm strike that left ice spreading across his body, cementing him to the ground. Learn your own advice. You have a few minutes before hypothermia kicks in. I'm sure I could get a pass for it, but I'd rather not kill you. So, tell me why you're here. Todoroki coldly stated, his left side steaming slightly in a tantalizing reprieve for the villains. The one he last froze broke immediately. We're here to kill All Might. Todoroki nearly laughed, I wanted a serious answer, not dash. He is serious. Shigaraki has some sort of weapon that can kill him. Honest. The desperation in the villains' voices certainly indicated sincerity, but no amount of candor could possibly reconcile the discomfort in Todoroki's mind. Kill, All Might. In the ruined zone, Bakugo was having the time of his life blasting villains with hardly a care. Furthermore, the only other student he encountered was probably the only one that he didn't need to worry about hurting in the crossfire. Stupid hair, aim for the throat, will ya? I'm tired of picking up your slack. Kirishima shook his head as he tanked a punch from a villain before headbutting him in the nose. Don't kill them, Bakugo. That's not manly. Who said anything about killing? Bakugo growled back as he wrapped both hands around a rock villain and fired explosions simultaneously. Now die. It didn't take long for all the villains to fall unconscious between the onslaught of the two most combative students. We ought to find the others and regroup, right? Bakugo looked at the downed evildoers and grit his teeth. That fog bastard said they were looking for All Might, probably to kill him. Kirishima scoffed, like that's an actual problem. Shut it, hair for brains. They wouldn't be here if they weren't serious. The redhead reflected for a moment. I guess you have a point, but what can we do about that? Not like we can actually fight anything that can go toe-to-toe with All Might. The explosive teen grit his teeth in a twisted grin. Oh, we absolutely can. I'm going to be number one and you're going to be my meat shield. Kirishima scratched his head. I'm terrified and pumped at the same time, but let's do it. They burst out of the building and made their way out of the ruins zone to the central plaza, luckily, or unluckily, if you're Bakugo, not encountering any resistance. That was, until they actually arrived at their destination. Holy fuck. 10 minutes prior. Aizawa growled as the last of the villains fell down, completely wasted by the pro. Unfortunately, he wasn't in much better condition. My eyes are practically screaming. True to his words, his eyes were bloodshot and red, but not because of his quirk. I need to rehydrate, but I still haven't finished off that prick with the hands or bird brain. Shigaraki chuckled as he approached Eraserhead, not even adjusting his steps to avoid stepping on his fallen comrades. Man, Eraser, I know we're on opposite sides, but you're just so cool. The latter grit his teeth and prepared his scarf defensively. This guy hasn't done a thing, but he looks completely confident. He knows my quirk and he just saw me beat his goons, so why is he approaching me like I'm the one in trouble? Aizawa didn't wait to find out. He charged the villain's leader and aimed an elbow at his face. While the attack landed, the villain moved at lightning speed, seizing the appendage firmly despite the blow. You're slowing down, Eraserhead. And your quirk's getting weaker. Aizawa roared as he felt his elbow's skin decay away, revealing the musculature beneath. Pulling back, Aizawa applied pressure to the wound, but eyed his opponent carefully. He's fast, maybe even faster than me at full strength. I'll have to use my quirk and disable him as fast as possible. Shigaraki scared, you're about to erase my quirk, aren't you? Nomu, can you help me out? Izuku was not a fighter. That much was made evident after he threw one punch and nearly broke his hand by hitting with the wrong knuckles. Okay, not a strong start. Just end this quickly and find the others. He, Yaoyorozu and Kaminari appeared to be trapped in the mountain zone, surrounded by a sizable group of villains. Midoriya, are you holding up alright? His fellow deputy rep called as she effortlessly dispatched villains with a bow staff. 3% Detroit Smash. Izuku mentally exclaimed as he struck a villain, this time with only the first two knuckles, out cold with a right cross. I'm fine. Kaminari. The electric type cried as he ran from a small group of assailants. I am not fine. I am very not fine. Yaoyorozu groaned and moved to help him. Izuku practically marveled at the ease with which she fought back her opponents, the tomo of his quirk spinning rapidly as they followed her movements. Even with the Sharingan, I'm having trouble dealing with these many villains. No wonder she got in through recommendations. You should really pay attention, kid. Izuku snapped out of his thoughts in time to feel a punch from a masked villain send him reeling. Midoriya, you okay? Kaminari said as he pulled his friend up. Izuku wiped some of the blood from his mouth. Why yeah, I'm fine. Just a little dazed. Yaoyorozu stood next to them. This isn't good. We're backed against a wall, literally and figuratively. Kaminari, can you not remotely discharge your electricity? He shook his head. Sorry, but I can't control the flow once it leaves my body. If I discharged, I'd probably shock you guys too. I don't think I'll be of much help. An idea popped into Izuku's head. I have an idea. Yaoyorozu, can you make a scarf like Aizawa-sensei's, but conductive? A smirk of realization spread across her face. I see. That won't take me too long. Can you keep them off us, Midoriya? Izuku nodded, feeling adrenaline spread throughout his body. Got it. He grabbed Yaoyorozu's bow and started pushing villains back, copying the moves he observed to the best of his ability. My wrists aren't as flexible as hers, but thanks to One for All, Izuku charged his leading arm and brought the staff down on a villain's helmet, shattering it and knocking the person beneath instantly. Then Izuku's eye twitched. Damn it. I'm almost out of time with the Sharingan. Yaoyorozu came to the rescue. Midoriya, it's done. She held a bundle of coppery cloth in her hands. She traded the scarf for her staff, a small smile on her face. Make sure you wrap it around skin. Izuku nodded, charging his power. I can't move as fast as Aizawa-sensei, but the principles are the same. Grip the scarf loosely with my left hand, wrap it with my right, get it back to Kaminari. Focus one for all in my legs and... Izuku took off, tracing his own movements to Aizawa's with the increased speed afforded by 3%. Dodging and weaving under the villain's blows with his Sharingan, he quickly wrapped it around his opponent's exposed arms, ankles, or necks. Anywhere he could find, really. Gur, buzz off kid. The last villain charged Izuku, his fist encased in stone. He's going for a haymaker. If I sweep the legs, with his supercharged leg muscles, Izuku easily knocked the footing out from under the villain, giving him the chance to wrap the scarf around his neck as he face-planted. Then Izuku threw the last piece of the fabric to Kaminari and shouted, that fabric's a conductor. Put it all through your arm. Realization dawned on the latter's face and he grinned, now this is what I expect from my student council. Take this. Kaminari channeled electricity through his arm, which traveled through the copper in the scarf through all the villains, essentially tossing the remaining 7 in one go. Izuku collapsed to the ground, laughing despite his exhaustion. His legs ached from accidentally going over his limit, his eyes stung from pushing the now deactivated Sharingan, and his jaw still rang from the blow he took. But damn it, he'd just fought villains. And he won. Man, Midoriya. Good call with the scarf move. That was pretty dope. Kaminari complimented. Yaoyorozu nodded, helping the brunette up, that was a pretty good strategy to think up on the fly. Though how did you think about that? Izuku laughed sheepishly, I sorta stole from Aizawa-sensei. Speaking of which, shouldn't we head back? Yaoyorozu nodded and pointed to the plaza where some fighting was certainly visible, the only way down is to rappel. It'll take me a minute or so to create the gear. Kaminari's sweat dropped, man, 13-sensei couldn't have made an elevator or something when he designed this place. Izuku chuckled, but a roar from something, it didn't sound human, snapped him to attention, that came from the plaza. Ugh, I can't see it from here and the Sharingan's timed out so I can't zoom in. I can make some binoculars. It'll only be a minute. Izuku grit his teeth, no time. I can probably scale this cliff with my quirk. Kaminari grinned, then let's go. He jumped onto Midoriya's back, lead on. I meant I'd go alone and you'd follow. Yaoyorozu rubbed her chin, I see. In that case she flung her arms around Midoriya's neck, onwards, Midoriya. Izuku's face was bright red. How do? Neither of them think this is weird. It took an insurmountable amount of willpower to not look down as he leapt down the mountain zone, mostly because the girl he was currently carrying bridal style was dressed as conservatively as debut midnight. Once safely on the ground, Midoriya hugged himself, I can never become Yagurum.I. Midoriya, we should be heading out, Yaoyorozu tapped his shoulder, earning a shriek. He whispered, just don't touch or look at me for a while. I'll be fine. Then a snap like a gunshot reverberated throughout USJ followed by a roar of pain. Hurrying to the plaza where the sound originated, the trio's stomachs collectively dropped. Aizawa was a mess. His arms were bent in right angles in the wrong way, his body looked battered and broken, and his face was practically streaming blood. The large birdman was clutching his head, squeezing it as if it were a balloon ready to pop. Shigaraki laughed at the sight of the pro-hero, man, Eraserhead, I can't believe you're still conscious. You're really something else. The villain looked around the plaza littered with the unconscious forms of his cronies and, way in the back, a few lucky heroes. Kaminari blanched, holy shit. Aizawa-sensei's in it bad right now. How should we proceed? Yaoyorozu grit her teeth, a bead of sweat betraying the terror she felt at her teacher's peril. Midoriya, any more bright ideas? He shook his head, all I can think of is to sneak around behind them and attack them while they're looking at us. They are. Yaoyorozu looked at the villains and sharply inhaled, they are. Kaminari was practically shaking, we gotta go. Now. They backed away slowly, trying not to attract any more attention, but it was too late. Great. I can grind some levels before the final boss. Shigaraki exclaimed maliciously as he made a mad dash for the students. Kaminari panicked and exclaimed, indiscriminate shock, 1.3 million volts. He cupped his hands together and fired a blinding stream of lightning at the ground, cracking the plaza's tile as electricity coursed towards Shigaraki. Luckily, Izuku and Yaoyorozu were able to jump out of range. However, the villain leader managed to avoid the surge entirely by leaping with surprising force, soaring over the teens and landing behind them. Man, that's a powerful quirk. Guess you're gonna give a lot of EXP, huh? Izuku and Momo grouped together, the latter forming a new staff while the former readied one for all. The latter spoke first, the pros are probably already en route. You can't possibly escape. Surrender now. Izuku gulped. Wish I had that confidence. This guy looks like a psychopath. So Kurojiri failed. That makes me mad. Shigaraki scratched his neck, but stopped to laugh once he realized something, big words, but you're shaking like a rumble pack. Why don't I help you stop? He charged Yaoyorozu, his pale hand stretched towards her face. But before he knew it, Izuku had dashed towards his co-deputy rep and extended his own fist out, sheer panic fueling him, Detroit smash. A shockwave reverberated throughout the stadium as Izuku struck his target. For a moment, he thought he'd saved the day. That euphoria was quickly lost, however, to horror once he realized that his target did not have black skin or a muscular figure. And he wasn't 10 feet tall. This kid pisses me off. Nomu, take care of him. Before Izuku knew it, he felt an incredible pain in his right arm, the same that he'd punched Nomu with, as the latter gripped it with its massive fingers. Then, it threw the green hero to be a good 50 feet, making for a painful landing and a very broken forearm. Midoriya. Yaoyorozu cried, Kaminari, we need to dash. Wei, Kaminari's face was the definition of derp as he repeatedly flashed a thumbs up to everyone in sight. Shigaraki laughed at the sight, not very bright. Nomu, finish the kid first. I hate heroes. He growled the last part, his seething rage filling the air with killing intent. Nomu screeched in response and took off, vanishing in a burst of wind. Izuku channeled one for all and managed to leap partly out of the way, but was still knocked back by the force of Nomu punching the ground where he used to be, pulverizing the tiles. This is crazy. He's nearly as fast as All Might. I need to buy Yaoyorozu and Kaminari time to escape. No time to hold back. Using his left arm to lift up his broken forearm, Izuku flicked his right hand, Delaware smash. A cannon of air shot forth and knocked Nomu back several feet and leaving a slight indentation on its skin, which quickly filled out again. Izuku clutched his broken thumb and middle finger, sliding his elbow pad down to his hand to act as a protective glove of sorts. This thing tanked 100%. All Might's power. And it can heal quickly. Shigaraki cocked his head, looks like we unlocked a secret boss. Those heroics, pushing my Nomu back, that move's name, it's like you're designed to piss me off. Wei. Kaminari bumped into Shigaraki, drooling slightly. The villain boss turned to the fried blonde, you're annoying. He casually reached a hand out towards the latter's throat but forgot an important detail in the wake of Izuku and this new distraction. Hiya. Yaoyorozu exclaimed as she cracked her staff across Shigaraki's face with enough force to break it. The leader crumpled to the ground, the hand covering his face falling off while his long blue hair took over obscuring it. She immediately grabbed Kaminari and made a break for the stairs leading to the exit. Midoriya, the leader's down. Overhearing this, the Nomu turned towards Shigaraki's unconscious body and screeched, forgetting all about Izuku and moving towards the former. It's going to help him. This is my chance. Izuku used his good arm to carefully pull Aizawa onto his shoulders, minding the broken arms, and ran as fast as 3% allowed. Sorry for the bumpy ride, sensei, but I can't leave you back there. By the entrance, Kurojiri was getting frustrated by the repeated attacks of the remaining students. Dodging acid, tape, and the anti-gravity fingertips was growing tiresome and the multi-limbed boy refused to give him an opening to escape. Now that they know my weak point, I have to focus on using portals to redirect and avoid their attacks. And I still haven't recovered from 13th's attack or using my special move. However, Kurojiri likewise prevented the students from either escaping or joining the fight, resolutely guarding the door so that Iida couldn't find an opening for longer than a second. And likewise, the students themselves were getting frustrated at their attempts to flee being thwarted by a cleverly placed portal. Shoji, have you found anyone? Uraraka exclaimed as she narrowly missed the metal neckplate for the umpteenth time. The masked teen shook his head, haven't been able to focus. He tried to envelop the mist man but failed to properly secure the main body as the latter slipped through his webbed limbs. Everyone. Shoji perked up. I found someone. Mina's sweat dropped while cutting off Kurojire's path towards his leader with a spray of concentrated acid. We all heard that. Genius. Yaoyorozu appeared from the stairs, barely winded from the long climb, much to Uraraka's jealous chagrin, with a laughing Kaminari in tow. Kurojire growled, those villains were even poorer than we thought. Unconsciously, he drifted towards the new threat, ready to engage. This is my chance. Iida ignored his relief at the sight of more classmates to make a mad dash for the door, which Kurojire had just left wide open. What? Kurojire cried as Iida raced past him and tried to shimmy his way through the door he left cracked open from his last attempt. Kurojire reached out with a portal, fully intending to use it to bisect this particularly annoying student, but felt his real body become weightless. Iida, go now. Uraraka cried as she pushed the villain up high. Iida finally made his way through and took off at max speed towards the main campus. I need to report this. That's game over. While the students diverted their attention, Kurojire warped using his special, extra-fast portal. Reappearing by Nomu and his master, the teleporter took a moment to recuperate. 2 quick portals and non-stop combat, I don't have much left in me. Then he noticed the unconscious form of his boss. Apparently, neither does he. Shigaraki. Tamura Shigaraki. Nomu, could you wake him up? While the hulking beast didn't even acknowledge the presence of his master's right-hand man, the fallen young adult started to stir. Ugh, critical hit. Shigaraki rubbed his face, only to recoil in shock after a second. Father? Looking at the ground in a panic, Shigaraki began to see that the sight of the hand that used to obscure his face lying on the ground. Father. He replaced the mask, but his breathing was expressive enough to indicate his fury. Kurojire paled, or at least his equivalent of paling. Shigaraki, do not do anything rash now. The pros will be here soon. Shigaraki started scratching his neck wildly. Everything's going to shit, Kurojire. I had a plan and nothing's worked. He looked at those students, the pesky brats that ruined his nearly perfect plan. He glared at the tall girl who knocked father off and then to the hero making his way to the stairs, clearly nursing his right arm while carrying Eraserhead on his left shoulder. Tamura Shigaraki, we should escape while we still can. Kurojire reasoned, but his words fell on deaf ears. Nomu, stop that hero brat. I want to play with him some more. Hey, could I get a hand? Izuku cried to his classmates atop the stairs, I don't really want to drag him up all these stairs. He's in it pretty bad enough. Sato looked down and grimaced at the sight of their broken teacher. I'm on it. Zero, help me secure his arms and stop the bleeding. The duo ran down the stairs and managed to secure Aizawa onto Zero's massive frame. All major injuries resolved thanks to Zero's quirk. You want me to tape up your arm, Midoriya? Looks pretty bad. Izuku shook his head. It's okay. The pain's not too bad anymore. Though that'll probably stop with the adrenaline. Sato chuckled. Tell me about it. I feel like once this stops I won't be able to MO. The sugar man's eyes widened, and he began to choke on his words. Zero similarly seized up. Izuku raised an eyebrow, but realization dawned when he felt someone grip the back of his gym uniform. Deku! Uraraka cried as Izuku was thrown back to the plaza by Nomu, landing painfully. Nomu then pulverized the staircase with a single punch, which Sato and Zero narrowly avoided by respectively jumping and pulling themselves back up to the entrance. Nomu then looked at the rest of the students and roared, flexing its massive arms threateningly. In response, Yaoyorozu stood in front of her classmates defensively, brandishing her third staff. If we all attack it in a coordinated effort, we'll be able to defeat it. This isn't good. Without Aizawa-sensei or 13-sensei, we're on our own until Iida gets back. And Bakugo, Todoroki, and Kurishima are probably the most combat-ready of us, but they're still not back yet. Izuku groaned as he sat up, nursing the shoulder he rolled onto. Nomu must have heard this because it immediately jumped back to the central plaza and stared down the injured student. It's targeting me. This is bad. I can't beat this monster. But if I don't, it'll attack the others. So, I have to at least stall it until the pros get here. I can do that at least. Take this, Delaware Smash. Izuku flicked his right index finger at the Nomu, biting his lip in pain as an air bullet rocketed towards the hulking beast's head, knocking it back a few meters. However, Nomu didn't retaliate. Shigaraki approached from the side, leisurely strolling with a confident gait. That attack, you're an All Might fanboy, right? 'Cause that pisses me off. He ran right for Izuku, fingers extended. If he touches me, I'm dead. I need to avoid him, too. Sharingan. Ignoring the burning pain he felt from forcing his quirk to activate, Izuku moved as fast as he could, even charging 3% of 1 for all in his legs to grant a speed burst. Your speed stat's really high. I hate that. Shigaraki swiped at Izuku, only managing to snag a bit of fabric over his chest that quickly decayed away. Crap. Faster. Faster. Faster, 5%. Izuku exclaimed as he pushed the limits to what his body could handle, managing to now comfortably keep up with Shigaraki. He glared intently at the boss, doing his absolute best to keep track of his movements. Oh, you're faster. And your eyes, they're so intense. Now I'm really mad. Shigaraki leapt back about 20 feet away from Izuku. Now's my chance. 5% Detroit Smash. Izuku leapt forward, ready to send his opponent packing. I can see where he was hit earlier. If I strike there, he'll probably pass out. Unfortunately, Izuku never even made it there. Nomu appeared in a flash and slammed the former into the ground, nearly shattering his ribs with the blow. Gah! Izuku coughed up blood, stars clouding most of his vision and pain blinding the rest. He could feel the beast's powerful hand crushing his torso against the jagged rubble, forcing his ribcage against his already sore lungs. Nomu looked at Izuku and growled, as if about to pounce. Izuku couldn't help but think back to the important moments in his life, seeing how it was clearly about to end. The day he first saw the video of All Might saving all those people in the collapsed building. When he learned he was quirkless and his mother just apologized to him. The time Kaken and his friends beat him up while their original victim escaped. When he met All Might, got told off by All Might, then praised by All Might in the span of a few hours. Recovery girl telling him that he actually had a quirk. Getting into UA. Finally catching up to Kaken. I still have so much left to do. Off. He clawed at the hand on his chest, ignoring the searing pain in his right arm. Nomu looked at Izuku almost quizzically, unable to decipher the pain, gasping. Izuku's eyes felt like they were on fire, but so did the rest of him. Nomu, with its simple mind, couldn't help but get hypnotized by the glowing red in his victim's eyes, the two tomos spinning so rapidly they appeared to be a solid black ring around his pupils. There was a loud sound like a bang. Why can't you ever save yourself, you damn nerd? Bakugo blasted his way in and launched a powerful blast at Nomu's back, forcing the beast to lighten his grip in pure surprise. Get off me! Izuku finally hissed. In that moment, he heard a ringing sound and his eyes positively screamed in pain. But Nomu complied, removing his hand from Izuku while still kneeling over him. Nomu, what are you doing? Shigaraki cried in panic to no avail. But more shockingly, Nomu's normally blank eyes were now glowing red, with two tomos surrounding the pupil. What the? Izuku didn't let himself dwell on the fact. He had a mission. Gotta stop him now. If he fights All Might, if he fights the others, I need to stop him. Now! Izuku couldn't make a fist, so he focused one for all into his palm, much like he did against Bakugo, but now at full power. Green lightning swarmed Izuku's right hand, crackling with such ferocity, the ground beneath it crumbled away. Take this! Izuku roared as he pushed his hand against Nomu's head, forcing all the power he could muster out. There was a bright flash and a Nomu screech. Then the latter was sent flying back, a massive chunk of his head missing while the rest crackled with green lightning. It landed on the ground with a thud. Izuku looked at the fallen monster and laughed, an incredible lightness filling his body. Then he collapsed back. Bakugo was at a loss for words. The students at the top of the entrance, struggling to find a way to help out, were at a loss for words. Yaoyorozu and Shiro, who had rappelled down to aid in the inevitable injuries that would result, were at a loss for words. The villains were certainly at a loss for words. Midoriya. Kirishima broke the silence in the compound by charging towards his fallen classmate, propping his unconscious body up. Christ, your hand. Shiro and Yaoyorozu managed to pull themselves together and ran over as well, the latter already producing bandages and antiseptic to treat the greenette. Bakugo couldn't stop staring for the life of him. That blast. When did you catch up like that? Gur. God damn it. Shigaraki clawed at his neck until blood drew at the sight of his Nomu. The head wound was taking its sweet time to regenerate, and even then, it was unclear if Nomu would have the stamina to fight anymore. My anti-symbol of peace, defeated by a child. Tamura looked at the unconscious boy, currently having his bloody hand wrapped up in fresh gauze. That kid. Before he himself knew it, Shigaraki was headed right for Midoriya, killing intent on full display. He got pretty close to and might have succeeded in disintegrating his target, if not for a giant ice wall. And I was worried you might be able to kill All Might. Todoroki deadpanned as he pulled his right hand back, mist wafting off of his fingertips. The large one's supposed to be the weapon. But he's down, and the only other one that's down is Midoriya. How did he do this? Shigaraki didn't have time for another rant because Bakugo managed to pull himself together and aim his remaining gauntlet at the former. You know, I didn't get to show OFF since Deku destroyed the other one, but take this. Die. He pulled the pin on the gauntlet, sending a massive explosion towards the villain boss. The ice wall shattered under the pure force of the blast, which also sent Shigaraki flying back towards Kurogiri. The fireball itself filled the air with the acrid stench of smoke while obscuring either side from each other. Ugh, Kurogiri. Shigaraki groaned, shiny red burns dotting his body. The warp man appeared through the smoke. I'm here, Tamura. We should leave now. The boss was silent but nodded. Shall I retrieve Nomu? Kurogiri expanded his form into a portal large enough for Tamura to enter through. Shigaraki nodded again. He's still healing so he's not dead, but that brat's attack completely surpassed his shock absorption. I doubt he'd be able to fight All Might now. Kurogiri didn't say much else as he summoned another portal beneath the nearly regenerated Nomu. Don't worry, Shigaraki. This is only the beginning. They disappeared around the same time as the smoke did. Coincidentally, the rest of the villains started to wake up around the same time. Hey, what happened? Shigaraki's gone. So's the big guy. The students, they're still here though. Wait, so they beat the boss? All Might's not here either. Who cares, let's kill them. Then we'll kill All Might. There was a crash and a furious voice. I wouldn't be so sure about that. Later that night, Izuku awoke with a start, his heart racing as he desperately searched for Shigaraki and his beast. What the, where am I? He looked at the white walls and flooring, as well as the curtains around him. You're in the nurse's office, young Midoriya. Izuku turned to the speaker and came face to face with All Might in his skinny form, sitting right next to his bed. Hey All Might? Are you okay? What about everyone else? 13-sensei. Aizawa-sensei. Izuku began to sweat. All Might couldn't help but laugh at the irony of his protégé's concern. Your classmates are all fine. Many of them are actually still here, waiting to get picked up by their families. I arrived only shortly after you passed out and defeated the remaining villains. The pro's face took on a slightly darker look. As for your teachers, I'm afraid Aizawa and 13 are both in the ICU. They're expected to recover, but they're not in the best of health. Although, for that matter, neither are you. Izuku looked at his body and nearly freaked out at the number of bandages surrounding his torso and right arm. I look like a mummy, what happened to me? All Might cleared his throat and pulled out a clipboard. Recovery girl had to go check on your teachers at the real hospital, but she healed your broken ribs and arm as well as replacing the skin on your hand. She said you might have some hairline fractures left, but healing those might drain your stamina. You have small tears in your leg muscles dash. Probably from when I overdid it with one for all when I tied the villains up. Izuku murmured. And your hand is permanently scarred, but other than that, you're fine. There was some silence in the room before both student and teacher cried, wait, what? Izuku ripped the bandages off his right hand and sucked in his breath at the sight, much like his mentor. His right hand had 2 scars along the palm and his fingers were slightly crooked. The skin also looked slightly pink, but given that it was essentially regrown, that was to be expected. The symbol of peace looked down. I'm so sorry, young Midoriya. If I was quicker, if I was there today to begin with, this is my fault. We were just lucky that young Shiro and Yaoyorozu were able to stop the bleeding. Izuku shook his head. It's not your fault, All Might. I did this to myself, even after Aizawa-sensei told me not to. All Might gulped, internally giddy that his student harbored him no ill will. Well, at least there's no damage to its function. And you know, I heard that girls like scars. As if I know anything about that. Izuku just sighed. I guess that's the price for not mastering one for all. Oh. But I was able to control 3%. And I did do something really cool with it. What's that? Izuku held out his hand. I couldn't make a fist so I concentrated it into my palm and then it started sparking like crazy. And when I hit the Nomu, everything exploded. Suddenly, Izuku paled. Wait, what about the Nomu? And the villain boss? All Might shook his head. We didn't get them. They left with that warp quirk guy. All we got from the captured villains were their names, Tamura Shigaraki and Kurojairi. He put a hand to his chin, but you concentrated one for all into essentially your skin to produce explosive power while preserving your bones. That's actually kinda ingenious. Huh, really? All Might shrugged. Yeah. Breaking your bones might cause longer lasting damage, but skin is a bit easier to heal, especially with Recovery Girl. Although, I doubt that it's anywhere near as powerful as the punch you used against the zero-pointer. Izuku nodded. Yeah. And I haven't trained enough to regulate where I focus one for all, so my control is pretty bad. Well, with the Sharingan, you were able to control 3% after only a few days. So learning that shouldn't be too hard. Oh. One more thing. All Might muttered, Jesus, kid. I can't take many more surprises for today. I looked at Nomu for a moment with the Sharingan and, I don't know, it was like I could control him, you know? Like I could just insert whatever I wanted into his mind and he'd do it. You get what I'm saying, All Might? All Might was shaking, scary. That sounds familiar though. All Might? The hero cleared his throat. Well, maybe it's another ability of the Sharingan. You know how you activated it? I just, really wanted him to get off of me. Then I looked at him in the eye and he just, got off of me. It sounds like a dangerous power. The ability to control others through eye contact. I'll speak to Recovery Girl about it, but I don't think you should use it too often. Lots of ethical quandaries with a power like that. All Might cleared his throat. Anyways, that's enough serious talk for now. It's late and I'm sure your mother is worried about you. Your classmates certainly are. All Might gingerly helped Izuku into a fresh UA jacket and ensured his bandages were still securely tied. Then he led Izuku back to outside Class 1A, where many of his classmates were still waiting to be taken home. This is where I must leave you. I'm afraid I can't maintain my muscle form any longer. Izuku nodded. Thanks, All Might. You know, for everything. The pro seemed taken aback, but smiled. Of course, Midoriya, my boy. Enjoy the weekend as much as you can. Midoriya nodded and quietly entered the classroom, only to nearly jump into the ceiling in surprise. Hey, Midoriya's back. Kirishima practically shouted, running to his friend. Midoriya. Glad to see you in good health. Iida saluted his fellow class officer with a relieved smile. Kaminari twitched. Hey, Midoriya. Sorry for the T-twitch. Happens after I overdo it. Jiro just chuckled from behind. Hey, Midoriya. I heard you were, cool. Kaminari blushed. That's not funny, JJGG. He couldn't say her name, much to her amusement. Midoriya, good to see that you're mostly recovered. Yaoyorozu smiled. Oh. Yaoyorozu, I heard you and Siro gave me first aid. Thank you. Izuku bowed, slightly blushing from the overwhelming well-wishes. She waved him off. It was nothing. You helped me earlier with the villain boss. Although. She sighed, I feel like I should apologize. Huh. What for? It's just that, I thought you were too shy and awkward and, well, jumpy to be a hero. Izuku laughed sheepishly. She and everyone else. But you were the most decisive out of all of us today. I guess I just want to apologize for judging you harshly and thank you for teaching me I still have a ways to go. She bowed deeply, much to Izuku's embarrassment. And no, I'm definitely super shy and weird and awkward. You don't have to apologize at all. I should be apologizing. He bowed right back. No. I insist that I was wrong. I'm sorry you feel the need to feel sorry. She bowed even faster. This continued for some time until even Iida muttered, this seems excessive. Kirishima just laughed, from you, that's ironic. The only thing that could have stopped the bowing battle burst through the door at that moment, Aizawa. Gah. Mom, my ribs. Shigaraki Tamura growled as Kurojairi applied a bandage to his head wound, beaten, by low-level NPCs. This is humiliating. Kurojairi placated, patience, Shigaraki. Your victory will come in time. A rich, deep voice sounded from the TV, listen to Kurojairi, Tamura. Today's battle may have been lost, but the war is far from over. It's only just begun. And today you laid the foundation for their defeat. But, sensei, I didn't even get to the final boss. Nomu was defeated before then. Asai escaped the powerful voice. Well, that's unfortunate, but at least you recovered him. Losing a Nomu this powerful would have been a tremendous waste. And now, I can make him even stronger than before. Shigaraki groaned as the antiseptic burned his wound, but Nomu was beaten by someone so tiny. Was it really a mini-boss? This boy that defeated him, what was his quirk? Some sort of enhancement quirk. Incredibly powerful, but it caused him damage at full power from what I saw. Kurojiri explained, although the attack that injured Nomu was interesting. It was more electricity than brute force. The electricity, what color was it? Kurojiri raised an intangible eyebrow. It was green, maybe. The voice chuckled, yellow to blue to green. Funny. Sensei. Never mind me, Tamura. Just an old man's musings. Anyways, we merely underestimated these students, but it won't happen again, yes? Shigaraki growled, never. I'll never forget those damned eyes again. Eyes? What eyes? Even later that night. Izuku slowly trudged down the stairs of his apartment complex, garbage bag in tow. After coming home, after his mother nearly flooded UA with her tears, the Midoriyas feasted on katsudon and cried. Then they ate more katsudon and cried more. Sometimes, they did both at the same time. Either way, Inko passed out from exhaustion, worry, dehydration, or, most likely, a combination of all three. Leaving Izuku to clean, which he didn't mind doing. Approaching the dumpster, Izuku threw the bag over the metal container's walls and took a moment to smile at a job well done, interrupted only by a whimpering, ow. His hair stood up straight and his skin bleached. Again. Is someone there? He took extra care to listen, but didn't hear anything. I'm sure I heard it this time, but to be sure, Sharingan. Izuku scanned the dumpster for life signs. A few rats, a couple bugs, a kid, more rats, what the hell? Izuku got really close to the dumpster. That's definitely a human. It's a child. She's shaking, I know you're in there. There was a small gasp and Izuku could see the glowing form of the child through his Sharingan. Tense up, you should come out and go home. Your parents are probably worried. There was no response, so Izuku sighed, deactivated his Sharingan, and pulled himself up and over the edge of the dumpster, favoring his left arm for obvious reasons. Great. Now I need to clean my shoes. He looked around, but didn't see anything where the child was supposed to be saved for a filthy mop. Wait. Wasn't that in the recycling yesterday? Izuku dug around the mop, which actually turned out to be hair. And the source of the voice was indeed a child. A small girl with teary red eyes and a large horn at that. Izuku smiled, there you are. You should really go home. It's super late. She didn't respond, but stared at him fearfully, trying to shift back in the filth, as if to seek comfort in the camouflage it provided. What the heck? Hey, it's okay. I want to help you. I'm a student at UA. My name's Izuku, what's yours? He extended his right hand out to show goodwill. She didn't say anything at first, but widened her eyes at his arm. Did they get you too? Izuku cocked his head. They? Who's they? What does she mean, too? The girl gestured to her arms, which were also covered in bandages, although rather poorly. That can't be hygienic anymore. What happened to this girl? Hey, it's okay. I'm going to be a hero. I'll protect you if you're scared. Izuku reached out and cupped her cheek, flashing his best All Might brand smile. At first, the girl seemed to shirk away, but she gradually leaned into his hand, eyes tearing up. Hey, I'm sorry. I didn't want to scare you. He tried to pull his hand back, but she gasped when he did so and instinctively grabbed it and placed it back on her cheek. While she didn't smile, the corner of her lips tugged outward slightly. Izuku smiled again, this time as genuinely as he could. Let's try this again. My name's Izuku. What's yours? Eri. She whispered, still clutching his hand to her face as if fearful that he'd disappear. He smiled at her. It's nice to meet you, Eri. I promise, it's all gonna be okay now. Wanna know why? Why? Because I am here. She looked at him quizzically but nodded after a moment, her eyes shining and her lips tugging as far up as she seemed capable of doing. We should probably get out of the trash soon. If you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you later, bye bye.